I'm here with Jeff in another one of those skating to the edge of what we know to discover what is emergent with us today and to offer translation and interpretation to the human experience, at least the way we are experiencing the human experience at the frontiers of emergence. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Aviv. It's lovely to be back with you.
And you are in a hotel in Heathrow Airport?
Yes, the Sofitel, which has a test and rest plan where I can get my COVID test, have a good night's rest, and hopefully be off tomorrow on a flight to JFK.
That's awesome. And I'm coming to you today from Jupiter, Florida, and have enjoyed already my ocean run and swim. So all is good. We are prepared to embark on a new discovery. Where should we go first?
Well, I know you've just been in another uplifting, perhaps action-packed, intensive exploration for the last few days. And I would love to hear about that. And I have a feeling that it fits within an overall context of maybe a body of work that is emerging. And we can, I hope, explore a bit of that context, but especially the content of where you have recently been. So skating to the edge of the unknown, at least unknown until a few days ago. So I would love to hear a bit more about all of that.
Yeah, that'd be great. So yes, this was a weekend in a series of weekends that started last July, and we have spoken about them. After most of them, the body of work emerged a couple of years earlier, and it is what we are describing as the Epoch culmination. And we're tracing the Epoch culmination both as an idea of the long wave trace of the last 2,500 years, the medium trace of the last 400 years, the more recent trace of the last 60 years. And as we do so, we are as equally interested not just exploring those events as though they're happening outside of us, but to recognize that we are each a representation of the culminating epoch. So the epoch is culminating inside us. We are culminating inside the epoch. We are culminating inside the individual and the collective experience at the edge of the human experience at this time. All of it is interwoven together, so the experience has this alternating current of alternating the foreground, which may be the exterior story, and the background, which may be the interior story, or at times we will reverse what we call the foreground and the background, because essentially every time you focus on one of those dimensions, the other becomes the background. And here is the menu, so you can take a look. These are, I knew we will be speaking this morning, so I harvested 9 themes from 4 days of about 6.5, 7, 8 hours. I mean, altogether for me, it becomes a 12-hour day, but in the large scale collective exploration with a couple of hundred people, that is what we do for about 7 hours a day, last Saturday and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So some 28 hours, and we have about 90 minutes, so we can distill and or focus on whatever makes sense. The first 2 themes, expanding the range of the human possibility and expression, breaking the 10% barrier, surfaced in the previous Saturday, and inside the context of a workshop or a clinic type session where we also addressed the unconscious switch and shadow work. You and I have spoken a bit in one of our recent calls on leading through the unconscious and explored some of those technologies. So there was that theme and how it plays and how it relates to shadow work. And then the nonlinear nature of the universe and the nonlinear you was a bit of a context setting to the green trace of the epoch progression. You and I have spoken before, and I've mentioned the red, the orange, the yellow. I should say, when we use these colors in this context, because some people will be familiar with other frameworks that use various color systems. Spiral dynamics comes to mind, the integral framework comes to mind, which also follows some kind of a rainbow shades. We are using the sevenfold rainbow system here to mean something else. In those other two systems, they often represent developmental stages and or meme structure and or levels of consciousness, all of which are relevant and important. We're using in the Epoch Culmination body of work the rainbow to mean, based on the premise that we have explored before, where it's not just we humans, a sense of collective humanity flying solo, but rather we are forever with the more than human realms, what we also call the causing realms. And we associate those realms of potency or realms of energy or realms of potential. We borrow those colors to represent a set of permissions and a range of potential that each of which represents, and we actually see these to be seven potentials, seven fields of potential, seven fields of energy, seven windows of permission or ranges of permission that are flowing through the entire epoch, say the 3,000 years. Depends how we calculate it, and we may be looking at the axial revolution as a transition point, although we will be bringing, when we do the red, the ancient Egypt dimension to it, which in traditional historic framework will be associated with the Bronze Age, but we're actually looking at it at what that significant ancient culture represents to mean something else for the origination point of this epochal transition that is culminating now. So all that is part of the green trace, and we've done the yellow and the orange and the red in the past. We've focused this weekend on the green, and actually inside the context of the green, we were called into the practice of being dialytic, that is cleansing and healing, of the red and orange epochs, or influences through the epoch, especially the below the line elements of these. So again, one of the mental models we use in this work is the idea that any potential comes free of any bias, free of any affiliation, free of any identification, and is simply offering a range of response possibilities. And those may be translated above the line to represent what is natural, what is constructive, what is creative, what is generative for life. And below the line may be what is arresting and or depleting and or even degenerative. History is, of course, full of examples, a lot more below the line, but also rich examples above the line. And the idea of being dialectic is, if we're going to unleash the fullest potential of this time, we are called to acknowledge and to become healing and cleansing in our attitudes and intentions and sentiments and response and behavior, such that we are constructive agents for that epochal transition. And in the context of that, we brought also 7 inquiry lines to facilitate the activation of the green potential and encourage its updating download and what that meant. And then we actually had a breakout session, and different groupings went deep on each of the 7 questions. And at some point, if you were interested, we could just bring on screen the 7 inquiry lines. And actually the 7th of that inquiry lines is one where we then came into focus, all of us together, which centered on this idea of, so is there a place, and if yes, what is the place of chivalry, respect, honor, reverence, and other human virtues in this irreverent, post-everything, post-modern, but post-everything time. And inside the journey, there were also other elements that were not planned, but appeared emergently so. The shift of this idea of confirmation, and the shift in the confirmation function inside the self-authoring journey, which is an invitation to heal yourself, heal thyself from insecurity and inferiority. And something that surfaced really at the back end of the meeting was the broader domain of healing through listening. So each of these could easily take a good 45 or 90 minutes, but our time is precious, so I will defer to your intuition and wisdom how to best utilize the time, or you may want to take us in a whole other direction.
Well, I would love to follow the direction that you're opening up. I realize there are many paths within this overall direction, and one that for some reason really speaks to me is number 7 on this list. Of course, 7 is a sacred number, but I get something around the place of chivalry, respect, reverence, and human virtue in this irreverent post-everything time. The word chivalry jumps out at me. Post-everything jumps out at me. Reverence, well, it all jumps out at me, apparently. So I feel like that's a great starting point. If it would be helpful to lay out the 7 inquiry lines, because that somehow tees up the 7th theme, we could do that.
Yeah, sure. So, but would you like me to actually place a little bit of context of what we mean by the green trace, so that when I talk about the 7 inquiry lines, they have a context inside.
Great. Yeah, whatever machinery we need to dive in, let's add that.
Okay, so I'm going to skip a whole bunch of slides that I prepared in case you are interested in other topics. You quickly can glance at some of the diagrams, and if you're interested, we'll get back to this and what they represent.